Welcome aboard the Athletics Can't Wait Jets podcast, your nonstop shop for all things Jets with Tim McMaster, Zack Rosenblatt, and Marissa Dunn.
Can't wait.
The NFL draft 1 week away from today. Thank you for joining us on the Can't Wait podcast. Tim McMaster here, along with Zack Rosenblatt, our Jets reporter at The Athletic, and Marissa Dunn, our producer. Please subscribe on YouTube if you're watching us live or wherever you listen to the podcast. Give us that thumbs up on YouTube. Give us 5-star reviews. That helps us out as well. The Athletic's Nick Baumgardner is going to join us today on this pod to talk more about the draft. He's in the weeds right now, getting ready for next Thursday. We're going to talk about some of the moves the Jets have made over the last 2 weeks. And of course, the move the Jets haven't made over the last 2 weeks. I tweeted Zack today that I feel like it's been a month since we podcasted, yet nothing has changed. We could just keep waiting. It's a fascinating thing. But the one thing that I will say is, for the last how many years, this was like the season for the Jets, right? Like, it's the draft. We're going to win the draft. It's a great time to get some fresh players and get this thing going. This year, it just doesn't feel like that. It feels like the draft is not where the wins are going to come. They're actually going to come during the season. It's kind of neat. Yeah,
it's a very weird thing to be like. There just doesn't seem to be much interest in this draft. Like, it's just like, you know, they're 13, so it's a good spot to get a good player, but you know, they're probably gonna get an offensive lineman, which isn't the most exciting position to be targeting.
For some,
yeah. Not in that household, but but yeah, I don't know. It's like especially this is my first offseason covering the Jets too, and you know, as you kind of alluded to, like the offseason is the Jets fans' Super Bowl historically, but now Jets fans have their eyes on the real Super Bowl, so it's very strange. Like, there's still some exciting stuff. You know, I think the unknown has kind of colored a lot of why the interest is, like, you know, wavered a bit, because we don't know if the Aaron Rodgers trade is going to happen on draft day or not, which would impact where the Jets are drafting and what Joe Douglas might want to do at 13, even if he wants to trade back, get some more picks. Stupid street cleaners making a lot of noise. I don't know if you guys can hear that.
No, we're good.
Okay, good. Isn't it annoyed? I hate the street cleaner so much. Anyway, yeah. So the lack of excitement around this draft is very strange, especially for the Jets, especially coming off last year's draft, which like changed the trajectory of the franchise. Like, they're all in now, probably in part because of how good that draft class was last year. So it's a lot has changed in a year. We're still waiting on Aaron Rodgers. I'm happy that it didn't happen while I was on vacation in Florida. I think we alluded to that before, or I think it was the last time we spoke, actually. I was going to Florida for the long weekend, and I waited till the last possible minute. Then I finally told my girlfriend like a few days beforehand. I'm like, all right, I've been waiting to bring this up because I thought the trade would happen by now. But if it happens while we're in Florida, I might have to fly back to New Jersey early.
Well, we did have the whole Odell thing in the middle of there, too.
Yeah, I was going to say there was the Odell thing. Yeah. I guess we haven't talked since then. That's right.
Yeah.
The Jets thought that they were going to get Odell Beckham, by the way. Like, it was the day before, and I had heard as late as like the afternoon on Sunday that like they were confident they were going to get him, and then the news comes in. The Ravens just came in with that crazy offer, $18 million, like $15 million of it guaranteed, which the Jets weren't going to match. Like, it was to the point where a couple people I talked to in the building, I said, "Oh, I guess you guys aren't getting Odell." They're like, "What?" Like, there were people in the building that didn't know. Like, that's how it felt. It was like just a Sunday. They were all had their plan for that Monday meeting they were going to have with them, and then just kind of got ripped out from under them. But I think ultimately it's for the best, because that's a lot of money to give to a guy who hasn't played in 2 years.
Yeah. I want to point out a few things. One, Dwayne O had the over-under for the start of the show set at 1:48 Eastern time. He says in the chat that it was a push, but I know for a fact that when Marissa hit go live, it was still 1:47. So the under, you motivated us, Dane. You motivated us to hit the under.
We need you guys to push us like that, I guess.
Yeah. There you go. And the other thing that we should mention, because you should have done this on the top, but I wanted to throw people for a loop and actually jump right into the Jets, is that Marissa, you're heading back to Cleveland in the summer.
Yes. Exciting. So Michael re-signed with the Browns. I will be having the baby here, so I will be staying in New Jersey.
In Jets country,
like, not sure if I'll be able to make that Hall of Fame game versus the Jets. we'll see depending on when the baby arrives. But, how fitting if that's like her first sporting event is, just a Hall of Fame game on August 3rd in Canton, Ohio.
Every kid's dream.
Jets Browns. Yeah. So
Congratulations
we'll see
to you.
about that.
Very excited for you guys.
Yes, but I hope I am able to go, and then we can, connect again like we did last year when the Jets were in Cleveland. So
they'll be in Cleveland again during the season, so I'll be in Ohio twice this year.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. Yeah. So we don't know the exact dates yet.
No.
Yeah, so exciting times ahead. I'll be a lot more tired, I think, this time around, but excited. Yeah, can't wait.
You're already tired from that other podcast. They always keep you up late.
Yeah, exactly. exactly.
Yeah, now you'll already be up.
That's true.
We'll be up all hours of the day, no matter what. So.
Yeah, awesome. That's awesome news for you and Michael. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Before I want to talk about Dane's mock draft, Zach, but before we get to that, real quick, because I know you tweeted that we were going to talk about the latest Aaron Rodgers information. So what's that?
I have so many updates for you guys.
Tell us, Zach.
My update is that I literally have nothing different to tell you than 2 weeks ago when we last did.
How about 2 weeks?
I will say we said like we bet on when it would happen, and they were all surrounding day one of the draft. And one thing that has kind of become apparent here is that like it's maybe a better chance that it's day two, right, instead of day one.
I'm yes, like that would make sense. But I also like my confidence level that it even happens during the draft has gone like way down. I'd heard like a week or two ago that like the impression from the Jets that the Packers weren't budging. I'm sure the Packers would tell you the same thing from the opposite end. And if they haven't really had any meaningful discussions in the last couple of weeks, like of course day of the draft could spur action, but I don't know. I don't feel confident that I wouldn't say have like 100% confidence it's going to happen by the draft. And if I did a whole story, I think it was last week, maybe earlier this week. I can't even remember anymore. I don't know the days.
Yeah, you went from like 10 minutes after you wrote the article.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I wrote all the possible dates. Yeah, I wrote all the ranges. And if it doesn't happen during the draft, it's not going to happen until after June 1st because at that point, the Packers have no reason to do it before that. The Jets will be like, all right, we can just wait then. And then the worry just becomes, is he going to be there for training camp? And it's not guaranteed. There's like the parallels of the Brett Favre thing become even more intense because as Marissa was just talking about, the Jets are going to be playing the Browns for their first preseason game. 15 years ago, the Jets were playing the Browns. The day they traded for Brett Favre, they flew him to Cleveland, and he did a press conference in a small room in the Browns stadium to introduce himself before the preseason game. So and that would be almost 15 years to the day if they did that again. So it feels like it's like there's just a part of me that's like it. That just feels like it's going to happen because it's the Jets. But I'm hoping it happens next week.
Like with the Hall of Fame game, camp's going to start early for the Jets.
Exactly. Yeah, training camp will start early, like a week early, probably. So yeah, there's a lot.
Hard knocks.
I mean, the schedule is going to come out in less than a month.
Yeah.
At least in theory, like they don't have like an official day they do it until they announce like the special that they do. The NFL is certainly good. Look, everybody's assuming Rodgers is going to be a Jet. I don't think anything's going to change with that. It's a matter of when, but the NFL would probably like it to be official that Aaron Rodgers is there so they can hype up their Sunday night football, their Monday night football, their prime time, because the Jets are going to have a lot of primetime games. I know Peter King has said he thinks that they get one of the week one primetime. I don't think it'll be Thursday, but maybe like Sunday night or Monday night or something, which that's a pretty big one to like if they don't even have Aaron Rodgers yet and it's late July. So look, we're getting a few steps ahead of ourselves, but I think you kind of have to be pessimistic at this point. Whereas before I kept thinking it was going to happen. Now I don't know. And it's unfortunate.
You don't know when, right?
I don't know.
Still think it will.
It's going to happen. Yeah.
Somebody in the chat brought up all the starting to be these random rumors about like other
I wouldn't
teams.
listen to any of them. I don't think any of that is. I mean, maybe at some point the Packers get antsy, but I don't see that happening. So this is a very unique trade situation, which is why I think people are going to those rumors and speculation and will they just go get Lamar, all that stuff. I think it's because there's never been a situation like this where two teams are negotiating publicly for a player, and it's just like known that it's going to happen between those two teams. Aaron Rodgers, I don't know if you saw he was on Josina Anderson's like podcast or whatever, and he said that Aaron Rodgers was trying to recruit him to the Jets before he signed with the Falcons.
Calais Campbell.
Calais Campbell. I don't know what did I say?
You said Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers recruited Calais Campbell to the Jets. He said, like, come win a Super Bowl with me. So the fact that Aaron Rodgers is recruiting dudes to the team that he's not technically on yet, it kind of tells you everything.
It's a wild world.
It's just a weird situation, and you wouldn't have it any other way as Jets watchers and listeners and writers and fans.
That's how we do things. Mm-hmm. All right, let's talk about Dane's. I think it's his final mock draft. Right? I don't know. Is he coming?
Yeah,
the final 7 round. Yeah,
he only did a 7-round mock.
Every single pick.
Every team. No big deal.
Nothing. So we'll get into it a little bit because we'll dive into the draft more with Nick when he comes on in a little bit. But one thing that was interesting about this mock draft, I thought, was with the Jets picking 13, according to Dane, all the possible tackle options will be available for them. It's very different than a couple of years ago when they got Becton, right? Where like they were waiting to see who is left. This is a chance, and we lost Zach, but we'll get him back in a second. But Marissa, it's an opportunity where they're going to have their choice, which if you're a team, right, is great. Welcome back, Zach.
What happened there?
I don't know. If you're the team making the pick, it's great to have the options. Although, if you're afraid of it not working out and looking back, sometimes it's better to only have one guy that you have to take, because then if it backfires, you're like, well, I was the only guy left. Whereas now, if you can pick from any of them and the guy you pick doesn't end up being the best one, then it makes you look bad.
Yeah. And I think you saw that with the offensive tackle draft class from the Mekhi Becton year 2020. It was like there was
Wirfs,
there was 4 guys. It was Andrew Thomas, Jedrick Wills, Wirfs and Becton. And like if you talk to anybody, like everybody had different rankings. I think the Giants were heavily criticized for Thomas after that first year. He wound up being the best one. But yeah, it's when you have like a cluster of guys drafted in the same range, like they're always going to be compared to each other forever. And so you're under a lot, especially if you have, it's almost would weirdly almost be better that if only one of them was there, like, well, it's our only option. So then there's less risk, but yeah, you want the best one. I don't really know who the Jets think is the best one. I think all 3 like are different flavors. Nick will get into that with us in a bit. I think Dane had a Paris Johnson from Ohio State.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's who Dane had. Yeah,
and
then he had all of them going like 4 in a row,
right
or
there,
3 in a row, I think.
I don't think all 3 will be there at 13. I could be wrong. Like, this is a very weird, like, top 10. Like, there's a lot of different things that can happen, like with the quarterbacks, and there's a lot of rumors and stuff. It's hard to get a read on how it's going to go up there, but I think they'll have an option of at least one of them, maybe 2 of them, and which one they want the most. I get the sense that Broderick Jones from Georgia is like the project of the 3. Peter Skoronski is like in the AVT mold. He's got short arms. He can play all over the line. Do you want him at guard or tackle? And then I think Paris Johnson is maybe the most traditional, like, ready to go tackle kind of guy. So it kind of depends on the flavor you want. I don't think you can go wrong, honestly, with all 3 of them. I think all 3 are going to be pretty good players. They all have different appeals. But the Jets, like, it's pretty obvious that that's what they need, unless, and I had my draft board come out today where I ranked the 13 top options, like ranked in order, like likelihood. Like if someone like Jalen Carter fell to 13, then you obviously are going to consider taking him. There's the character concerns and all that stuff, but ultimately, I think they're going to come out of this with one of those 3 offensive tackles.
Yeah, you're right. It feels like these guys are safer than Becton, which always felt like as big as the talent was and the possibilities were, there was definitely a risk there. And we've seen that play out. All right, when you look through the rest of this mock draft from Dane, from a Jets perspective, I mean, I think any fan that looks at this would be like, all right, this makes a whole lot of sense for this team, because 2nd round, of course, they draft back-to-back in the 2nd round. Number 42, Joe Tippmann, Wisconsin, the 6'6" center who's, according to Dane, the best center in this draft. And
Michael really liked him at the combine too. He thought very highly of him. So
there we go.
He's a 6'6" center. Yeah, it's pretty.
And you can never go wrong taking lineman from Wisconsin, right? It's like just 43 defensive lineman, Keanu Benton from Wisconsin, and then as you go down the line, edge, a linebacker, a wide receiver late. I mean, overall, these are the things that you would hope the Jets would be able to get out of this. No safety. That's maybe the one thing that stands out.
Yeah, and I think Dane doesn't project trades either, and I think Joe Douglas pretty rarely stands pat. I don't think he trades back all that much. I think this would be a year that he would, maybe, unless there's a guy you really want and you think you could help you win the Super Bowl this year. But if they wind up giving up picks again with Rodgers, I could see a trade back at some point just to get some more picks. They don't have a 3rd round pick. They don't have a 7th. Don't have like a lot of needs, but they could use some guys for like future starting roles and depth and stuff like that. Like you said, safety, need linebacker. I think you could argue they need a receiver to develop for the future. Some people think they need a tight end, like a more athletic tight end than what they have. Seen a lot of projections with that. There's a lot of different directions they can go. This is like the best their roster has been going into a draft in a long time, which gives Joe Douglas kind of the ability to, once you dress, they don't have a center right now, and you need an offensive tackle for the future. Outside of those two things, like I think you could go best player available regardless of position almost in a lot of ways, because they have the ability to just add. If your goal is to win the Super Bowl this year, you don't want to add like a developmental, quarterback in the 2nd round. I think maybe there's an argument to be made to do something like that. I guess that's a discussion for a different day.
That'd be interesting for Aaron Rodgers.
Rodgers is 39.
Granted, he's 39 now, but like he was so annoyed when they did it with Love.
Like that would be a smart move for like the future of the organization, but also like everybody in this organization is fighting for their job. So I'm not sure how. Like, it's going to be a balancing act there. Like, if Joe Douglas has confidence he'll be here more than this year, then maybe you consider like Hendon Hooker or something. But anyway, I think they have the ability to just draft whoever they think can help them right now, which is a very unique position for a Jets franchise to be in.
Yeah, it's certainly nice. It's going to be different just covering this draft. How about a developmental quarterback later in the draft? Like, how likely is that in your mind?
I think it's a possibility. And I think they should consider doing it. I don't have as good of a read on like the mid-range. It doesn't seem like there's a great quarterback class at one side you get outside of the top guys. Nick actually helped me come up. I did something, I forget how long ago it was now, but Nick gave me some suggestions for like who some of their mid-round, when we get them on here, we give them some suggestions for like some middle round guys. I think there's like a Purdue quarterback, Aiden O'Connell. There's a guy from Stanford, Tanner McKee. Like there's guys that have like intriguing traits. And it can't hurt to have a young guy in the building if they clearly don't believe in Zach Wilson anymore. At the very least, to push Zach Wilson. They signed Tim Boyle, who knows the offense. He is friends with Aaron Rodgers, veteran guy. So they have 3 quarterbacks technically, but I don't think Tim Boyle's contract. I think he's guaranteed $750K. So I don't think or not $775K. So I don't think he's like a lock to make the roster. So I wouldn't rule it out for sure. If there's a quarterback there they believe can, if not be a starter, can be a quality backup, I think they would consider it.
Just upsetting, this quarterback conversation, considering like all these things probably lead to Chris Streveler not being on, well, maybe practice squad, right?
Yeah, you can still be the practice squad. Yeah, you need him.
All right. Well, you mentioned Boyle, so let's talk about the moves that this team has made. That was obviously one of them, and then the other main one since we last talked was Quinton Jefferson. Talk about where he
Maryland.
Terrapin right there.
Yeah.
Quinton Jefferson. And I think they only signed him for 1 year, $3.6 million. So I think that's really good value. 30-year-old guys. One of the better like pass rushing, like rotational defensive tackles they could have gotten on the open market. I don't think it's quite enough to like feel good about where you're at defensive tackle. So I still think they'll draft him pretty early. But he's a solid 30-year-old guy. He's been productive in the league. I think he had like 5.5 sacks last year or something like that. I don't have those stats in front of me. But yeah, they lost Sheldon Rankins, lost Nathan Shepard, re-signed Solomon Thomas. So right now you have Quinnen Williams who's holding out, and you have Quinton Jefferson, and you have Solomon Thomas, and then you have a bunch of guys who are more like practice squad fodder. So they need some help on the D-line. You do have some defensive ends like John Franklin Myers and Michael Clemens who can slide inside. But yeah, so I think that was a good low-cost signing. They haven't made any signings yet, I believe, that would go against the or maybe they have like one that would go against the compensatory formula. I guess Alan Lazard would go against that. And maybe McCole Hardman. Anyway, they've lost more than they've gained. But right. Quinton Jefferson was cut by the Seahawks. And so, that doesn't impact that formula. I don't think they're going to go crazy in free agency at this point. So they might wind up getting compensatory picks next year, which, is something to think about because it's additional picks that you have. But yeah, I think that was a quality signing. I think Tim Boyle made a lot of sense. there's been a lot of silence. Otherwise, I don't think they're done necessarily. I really do think that once Aaron Rodgers' deal goes through, I think some more stuff will happen after that, because then you'll start seeing the cap clearing moves that they don't really have a lot of money to work with right now because they still have Corey Davis on the roster. They haven't adjusted CJ Mosley's contract or Carl Lawson's. Jordan Whitehead's still around. I think he still will be, but something to keep an eye on. Guys like Ashton Davis, Bryce Hall, they're making close to $3 million in their backup, so they might get cut eventually. But they've hung out on all these guys, and I think that's because they're waiting for the Rodgers thing to go through. And hopefully it does before training camp, and they can make some more moves to make that depth chart a little better.
All right, let's bring in Nick Baumgardner. Excited he can join us. Obviously, national writer here at The Athletic, and with a big focus on the draft as well, among a lot of podcasting that he also does. Nick, thanks so much for coming on, man. We appreciate it.
Glad to be here, guys. Sorry, my camera is broken. I don't know what's going on. I'm gonna have to reset all this after we get off. But good to be here. Let's talk Jets.
Yeah, let's talk Jets, and we're going to talk plenty about next week's draft. But I wanted to start with you just put up a story, I think in the last couple of days, redrafting last year's draft.
Yeah.
And it has to make Jets fans happy. If you want a boost for Joe Douglas, if you're a Jets fan, go read Nick's story. Go to theathletic.com/can't wait. You can join for a great deal right now. But Nick, number 1, Sauce Gardner on your redraft, and then number 3, Garrett Wilson. Obviously, those guys were both high picks for the Jets, but not that high. So that's, amazing value that the Jets got.
Well, Sauce is probably by himself the one that's the real steal, because he looks like a generational corner. I don't want to say that because it's been 1 year, but when you really go back and you look at everything that he did last year, it's when you stack up every corner in the league, regardless of age, he was at the top in so many areas that are, something that we just don't see. And I think that the one thing I sort of hit on in that story was I think that his body type and his ability to do everything in both press and sit in zone and defend the run and ball skills, he is the prototype. And so that's the home run. And then to me, when you go down the list and you start going through it, Wilson is also a guy that, I watched him at Ohio State up close here. I'm still in Michigan, so I watched him all, through his whole career. He was amazing. And it's he's going to fall. Olave too. They're going to fall because they're not these big time, big body type guys, but they're different, and it's a new breed of receiver. And I think the Jets did a really good job of that, of being ahead of the game. You know what I mean? Not drafting they're in the past, but looking ahead.
And I think
you don't hear that often.
I think you still have them getting Jermaine Johnson too, right? Didn't you have them with the?
I did. And he was one that at the bottom of the first round where it was and I remember they got him late, and I remember last year and people were saying going into the draft, it was they liked him a lot, and maybe they would take him with one of their high picks, and they got him so late, and I was wow, that's a great deal. And then you go back and you look at him and what he did, and you're was he a first round pick? Probably. Because you look at everything else in that draft, and you're he had a good year. He's a solid player. And that was a really good draft for them. And yeah, it's no surprise they're in the spot they're in now.
Zach, you want to take it away to this year?
Oh yeah, sure. So for so the Jets at 13, I think it's a foregone conclusion almost at this point that they're probably going to take one of those 3 offensive tackles unless something weird happens. So how do it seems like all 3 of them have a little different flavor as an offensive lineman. What do you think about those 3 guys? How do you differentiate them?
Yeah, that's a good point. I actually, in my last mock that I did before the Beast came out, I had them trading up to get Skoronski because I was just I don't know which one they'll prefer. Yeah. But to me, it was you're all in, right? If you're trying to get Aaron Rodgers, and Skoronski's the best to me. So he's the one that a lot of teams are a little scared on. It's a similar conversation with Rashawn Slater, where he's got the short arms.
And Elijah Vera Tucker from the Jets a few years ago.
Yeah, it's got the T-Rex arms and all that. And Skoronski really does. It's shorter. They're really short. It's significant. But, everything Slater had, he has, from the processing and the feet and the strength. And same school, same O-line coach, same everything. Yeah. And he has that ability to really change it up and overcome that. So I like him the best. Johnson is the best toolsy guy. He's the best, attributes, the frame, everything else. And then Jones is probably the most explosive, I almost feel he would fit the Jets the best because he's the guy that's going to get up there. He can play right tackle and he can just bowl people over and just be a dude. And I think that when I looked at it, I was maybe they'd be okay with him. And if he falls to them, I think that'd be okay.
if all in the, I don't think all three of them will be gone by 13. But if that were to happen, is 13 too high for Darnell Wright? You think?
See, I don't like. I don't. Because I think he'd be the next in the stack, and like for a team like the Jets, if that's what you're doing, and like we just talked about, like their whole offseason plan, has seemingly been to go all in. So I think Darnell's a first round tackle, and I think that if he's next in the stack and you need a lineman, and that's what you're doing, and if you can't trade down, if you can't trade off it, right? I wouldn't hate it because I think he can play right tackle right now, and that's something they need. He can do it.
Plug a guy in right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think a lot of Jets fans have asked me if they would consider drafting the Ohio State receiver Jackson. I don't know how to say his last name, so I don't want to
Smith-Njigba.
Yeah. So I was just reading up on him in the draft piece. Yeah, I didn't know that much about him. I didn't realize how injury prone he was in college. He had that one great year, but last year he's pretty banged up. Like, but what is he like far and away the top receiver prospect in your eyes?
I like him number one. I don't know if it's far and away because this is a weird class. Like, and he has those weird, like you said, I mean, only played the 1 year. The hamstring was a problem. He's a 4.5. I mean, I think he ran the 40 of his life at 4.52, if we're honest, or whatever it was. So he is not a fast guy. He's not going to fit in every spot. He's like he's a very different version of Wilson, but it's similar, right? Like they're different guys. But man, I don't know. I tell you, like, they played really well together at Ohio State, and like they riffed off each other so well, and were able to create space for one another. And like so much of CJ Stroud with the evaluators is like, well, he was throwing to like an NFL roster. So I mean, like, it's not going to be like that maybe in the next level. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't hate it. I like him a lot. If I was going to take one of those guys in the teens, it would be him.
Yeah, and I think that goes along with, like, they wouldn't have gone after Odell Beckham if they weren't willing to just like add other weapons. So if they view him as like that kind of talent, then you maybe go and get him.
Yeah, and if Aaron likes that, right? Like if that's something that he's like, let's do it, I can work with that.
Yeah. And then I think defensive tackle is their other big need. I don't think Jalen Carter probably falls to them unless there's some like crazy slide. But what do you think of Kalijah Cansey? I've seen like some people think he's like top 15, others have him like, I think Dane has him late 20s.
Yes, people are all over the place on him. I actually saw the other day that he didn't take any visits, which I was like,
oh, I didn't realize that. Wow.
So that to me means one of two things: either something's going on and he's not taking visits, or, and I think this is more likely, teams are like bluffing on how they think about him, because there was a lot of people, if we go back to like January, February, that were like, he's a third round pick. He's a third round pick
because of his size.
Yep, he's too short, and he's not Aaron Donald. You guys are all acting like he's Aaron Donald, blah blah blah. And then it started to become this like, oh, he's too short. He's too short. And it's like, well, yeah, but he does everything else. And then when you really stopped and thought about it, it's like, yeah, he's a top 30 player, no question. And I think that I would definitely take him in the 20s, somewhere in there. I don't know about higher than that, but like, I think he's a late first rounder.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you make of the Aaron Donald comparisons, though? It's the problem. I mean,
I think it's not fair. I think it's not fair when we do that to guys, where it's like,
if you didn't come from Pittsburgh, it probably wouldn't.
It's natural. I think it would be because he's short, right? Like he's short and he's got small arms, but he's so explosive. I mean, like, I think that the Pitt thing, it's unfortunate sometimes because you wish that it's cool. I think he probably thinks it's cool right now, but like, he's not going to think it's cool in a year if he's not performing at that level. People are like, we thought you were Aaron Donald, and it's like, well, whatever. Yeah, but
yeah, exactly.
It's what it is.
And then so second round, it seems like, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like there's some pretty good like centers in this class. Like there's a handful of guys that you could like, if not plug and play right away, then pretty quickly. I know Jets fans are really, really like John Michael Schmitz. Joe Tippmann has been a name that's been thrown around a lot. Steve Avila. Like, what do you think about these center guys? Which one of those guys do you like?
Yeah, so John Michael Schmitz is the best, like, pure center in the draft. And I think he's a really good one. He's not like Linderbaum good. Linderbaum last year, if he hadn't gotten hurt in preseason, I think he would have been an all-pro. But he is, in terms of a pure center, he's the best one on the board. Tippmann is, I think I kind of like him better because I think he could do more things. I think he could legitimately play both guard spots and be okay and be a center, and you could do more with him. And then Avila is the guy I like the best there because he could play, like, he'd probably play tackle if you wanted him to. Like, this guy, he started a full year at center, full year at guard, I think like a half year at one of the tackles, and then like another half year at another guard. So in 4 years, he started at 4 different spots, including center. That is really rare. So he's the one to me. I almost wonder if some teams will take him in the first. I think he could
really
be
like a late first guy.
Yeah, that surprises people and goes way up high, or at least high in the second, right? Like, because he can do a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And so a couple weeks ago, I hit you up because I was doing something on like the possibility of the Jets like drafting a backup quarterback or whatever, and you gave me some names.
Yeah.
Who are some of those guys in the middle rounds that you like? You know, you told me I think Aiden O'Connell, Tanner McKee. There's a couple others. Like which of those guys do you think makes sense as like a developmental like backup guy?
Right, like we can't talk about Hendon Hooker anymore because apparently he's like
I know, like first round pick
now. Yeah. So like I guess that's off the table. But like yeah, I mean, it's the same conversation to me like that we have about the receivers in this class. So, like it's not a bad receiver class or quarterback class. It's not an elite one, but there are like serviceable, good like O'Connell is, depending on what you want him to do. Like to me, Aiden O'Connell is like the perfect NFL backup. I think he is a accurate, smart processor who throws a pretty accurate ball. He played in a pretty complex and smart system in college. He's not real flashy. He doesn't try to do anything that he can't do, and he's not trying to be anything that he's not. And I think guys like that can really just, if they find a home and they just sit there, like Chad Henne did that for so many years, right? Like that to me, like Aiden O'Connell, I was bummed that he didn't go to the Senior Bowl. He didn't get an invite, and I think he would have been better than any of the quarterbacks that we saw at the Senior Bowl. And he was at the Shrine, played really well. So he's the one to me that stands out. Haener is right there with him. I like those guys better than Jaron Hall. And Tanner McKee is like, buyer beware on him, I think, a little bit. Some people get him confused. They think he's like Davis, like the Davis kid that went to Houston. Yeah, and it's like, no, it's not quite the same thing. Like
he's big, right? He's like 6'5".
He's big. Yeah, he's big, and he played at Stanford and played in that pro-style offense and didn't have a lot of experience, so it's a similar story, but it's like, but Davis had so much more talent. So I think that this is a different kind of conversation.
Taylor Delgado says that O'Connell's mustache is terrible, so it's poor decision.
Yeah, that's true. He's like old too. Well, he's like, what is he, 20? He's almost 25, and he looks like he's like 30. So like,
it seems like a lot of these prospects are like older too. I mean, Hendon Hooker is obviously the biggest example, but I was looking through and there's a bunch of guys that are already 24, 25.
I think that's COVID.
Yeah,
I gotta think that's COVID, right?
Year, yeah.
Because like I noticed it. Yeah, I noticed it back in the season. Even we were like, man, you were talking about so many guys that are like 24, 25 years old, and it has to be COVID. But we're also seeing same thing is like this is like a really mature group of kids. Like you're not seeing. There's not a lot of idiots, in this class.
Yeah.
There are some. I'm not gonna lie, but like it's a pretty solid, mature. They've been through it group. You can tell.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll ask you this because I know you covered the draft, so you've studied a lot of these guys. Who are some of your like guys this year in air quotes? Because I'm sure you have some guys that are like.
Yeah, we were just doing one of those actually. Avila would be one for sure. Zay Flowers, the kid from Boston College. I love him. Another one that I bring up all the time that he falls outside the top. Ivan Pace, the kid from Cincinnati, a linebacker that is a 4th round pick that I love. Carl Brooks is the guy that I always stump for.
He had a good Senior Bowl, right?
Yeah, he played at Bowling Green, and he's a weird shaped guy. He's like 6 foot, 6'1", 300 pounds. Doesn't run that fast, but is like super agile, really explosive, and has a lot of like twitch and good moves. I think he led all of college football, including the Power 5, in pressures the last 2 years, and didn't get a combine invite. He's played defensive tackle, edge, outside linebacker, like stand up outside linebacker, and he's done well at all of it. So I think if you're like a good team, Ida Baware, the kid from Northwestern, is another one like that, right? Where it's like, oh my God, this guy can do so many. But he's like short and kind of weird shaped, and it's like whatever, who cares? So there's some guys like that in this draft.
I think about, even hearing you talk, I think about sometimes how we talk about like prospects and football players, and you're like, this guy's weirdly shaped. Like, you're like, but whatever. To a guy just like on the street, like, man, you're weirdly shaped. I don't know what you're dealing.
That's how we think of it, though, right? And then it's funny how sometimes you can talk to like actual players, and they will say the same thing. And it's like, I don't know why we all think of each other as like our weird shape, but okay, yeah.
Something about your shape is just weird.
Yeah, it's just off, but whatever. We can work with it.
Yeah, and so I was actually just thinking about this because you're obviously you're in Detroit, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we were talking before you came on about how it's like a weird draft year for us as people who follow the Jets because it's like there's the least amount of like investment in this draft. I'm curious if it's like that in Detroit right now too, because they're like so like they're not as like all in Super Bowl maybe, but they've like done it the right way. They're team on the rise and all that stuff. Like is it like, is the draft interest as high as it usually is there right now?
It's definitely different. It's definitely different. I think it is as high, but not the same level of like we're gonna like be either really happy or shattered after this first pick. Like that's usually the reaction that we hear, but like because they have so much wiggle room. Like I think the Jets are in the same spot. Like they were a good young team last year that even if they hadn't, gone in on Rodgers like this, they're a good young team making strides. They've done it the right way and they're building the right way. And there's no panic in this draft, but it's also like they still have a huge opportunity because Detroit could do so many things. So I think that the interest is really high, but that the panic has gone down, I think, quite a bit.
Yeah, gotcha. It's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Lions and Jets they're
very similar. Yeah.
Allison Kotsanik is my editor, and she does Lions and Jets, which is it's the first time there's like a lot of excitement going into a year for both teams.
Yeah, and she's been through it, man. She was there she was doing editing back when oh my God, like Gase was the coach with the Jets and Patricia was the Lions coach at the same time. So hey, here we go, Lions and Jets on their way.
There you go. I think we have some questions in the chat, Marissa.
All right.
Yeah, we have a few good ones. Okay, so we talked a lot about offensive line, but Dane wants to know, how interested do you guys think JD would be to trade back 5 to 10 picks if it regains him like a third? Or do you think they need one of those top 3 offensive tackles? What are your thoughts on that?
So like, I kind of think like, I go back to that all in thing where it's like, you're all in. Yep. Trying to trade, you're trying to pick up Rodgers, you're trying to get to the Super Bowl now. And if you have a high pick and they do, I would almost wonder if they want to trade up. Like that's kind of where I'm at with it. I don't know about you guys.
I've thought about that too. I think like Joe Douglas has proven willing to do that. And if like Jalen Carter, for example, is there at 8 or something, and they're like, we think this guy is an absolute star, let's go get him. Like I absolutely could see Douglas doing that. The only scenario I can see them trading back is maybe one of those quarterbacks are there and the 3 offensive linemen, or they don't like one of those offensive tackles, and that's the only one that's left. Like maybe then you trade back a little bit. Or all 3 offensive tackles are there and you can trade back like enough picks where you can still get one of them, kind of thing like that. Right. Those would be the scenarios. But yeah, I agree with Nick. They're clearly all in on this year. You don't go after Odell Beckham if you're not all in. Like, I think that's exactly. The most like, and Calais Campbell and like all these guys that are older and, and whatever. So I think I could see them trading back later in the draft to pick up some more picks, but yeah, I wouldn't predict it the first round right now.
Okay, this question is from John, and this was actually a question I was thinking of for Nick too. So I think this is great.
All right.
Since we were talking about the success of last year's draft, what would be a perfect draft for the Jets?
Boy, that's a really good question. Like,
not to put you on the spot or anything.
If like Jalen Carter fell to the Jets,
okay,
or something like that, and I don't like, because I like Saleh a lot. I do. I like a lot of. Maybe it's the Michigander in me, right? Like, and I have like people that I know that played up there. Anyway, but like I like his approach. I think the guys trust him, and I think that they have like it's the same thing with Campbell here in Detroit. Like they have the type of locker room that I think could handle a guy like that. I haven't heard Jalen Carter is like this evil human being. I've heard he's an idiot kid who's got like growing up to do. But like I think a good locker room could help a guy like that, and I think the Jets are closer to having that than probably most teams. I don't know if you guys would agree with that, but that's how I look at it.
Yeah, there's leaders in there now, although most of them were rookies.
Yes, but that's good. I think that's good that they're young and yeah.
Zach, what would you say perfect draft for the Jets is?
Perfect draft. The Aaron Rodgers trade happens. I don't have to deal with this anymore. That was a perfect draft for me.
before the draft, Aaron Rodgers is official.
But yeah, I mean, I think they get an offensive tackle. They get a center. Maybe you get another weapon, and then you fill a couple other needs on the depth chart kind of thing. I think that would wind up being. But I mean, ultimately, like I don't even think it's position based. You just look at how that draft went last year.
Right.
If you can come out of the draft saying we got, they had Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, and Breece Hall are, bona fide starters. And then, they liked how Max Mitchell was playing, and they liked how Jermaine Johnson, like that's 5 guys. Michael Clemens, they like too. So all 6 guys.
They had a great draft, yeah.
Like the odds of you having 6 guys that you like after a year are pretty slim. So if you can come out of the draft with similar like hit rate, then I think that's a perfect draft.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Definitely.
All right, Zach, anything else for Nick, or should we let him get back?
He covered everything. It was awesome. Thanks for coming on, Nick. That was
you bet, guys. Anytime. Next time I'll try to do it on my computer. But anyway,
he's got a busy week ahead. So
seriously.
Yes, busy week
now.
Yeah, we'll get some sleep in. Anyway, thanks, guys.
Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Nick.
All right. Yep, you bet.
All right, good stuff from Nick Baumgardner.
Great.
Thanks for the good questions from the chat as well. I think there's one more thing that we want to cover on this episode before we say goodbye, and that is just kind of checking in on Quinnen Williams, but also giving kind of a shout out here because Jalen Hurts obviously signs the massive contract this week, biggest contract ever for NFL player, right? Not just obviously quarterback.
Yeah, like in terms of like pure like money,
per year, right? Yeah, not overall, but
more like guaranteed or whatever. Yeah.
And Jalen and Quinnen have the same agent, and she is obviously an agent who is just breaking ground left and right. Nicole Lynn. When Quinnen was drafted, number 3, she was the first female Black agent to have a first-round draft pick in the NFL, and now she has the biggest contract ever. I mean, amazing stuff. Hurts' entire team around him. I saw that on.
It's all women. Yeah,
somewhere. It's all women.
I don't know how much more likable Jalen Hurts could be, but
he just keeps,
and his journey is unbelievable, from being benched in the national championship.
I saw the clip resurfacing of him like after that championship game where he was like they were asking him all about how he's supporting Tua still even after they took him out, kind of thing. Yeah,
good character gets you far in life,
Yes, for sure. But yeah, as it relates to Quinton, you were about to get into, Tim.
Yeah, I mean, she got the biggest contract ever. Is she going to get the biggest defensive tackle contract underneath Aaron Darnold? Probably, right?
He's not going to get $30 million. I think Jeffrey Simmons, who was one of the names to watch, I think he came in around 23, 24 per year. The funny thing is with this per year stuff is it's not like an accurate representation of a contract, which kind of gets lost in like all the. Right. But anyway,
you've used 25 though. Like
I've been saying I think he winds up aiming for. I mean, he might be aiming higher now. Or maybe a lot of times they just want more than the highest. Like even if it's just a little bit more,
he's texting Nicole. Okay. I want Jalen money.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're not going to get that, Quinton. I'm sorry. Hate to break it to you. But, I mean, they're going to get this done. I don't think there's any concern from the Jets. He's not at the early workouts. I don't think that's a big deal. He probably won't be at OTAs unless they come up with the deal soon. I really do think somebody pushed back on this when I tweeted this. I think the Rodgers thing is holding up a lot of stuff because, and it's not just because they know what Rodgers is going to cost, but right now they can't even technically fit him under the cap. So they need to adjust the cap. They need to release some guys. They need to adjust some contracts before they can even do anything. So I think they're going to take their time on Quinnen. Ideally, maybe you get him in for mandatory minicamp, but even that I don't think is, that big of a deal because training camp's starting so much earlier for the Jets than other teams. So as long as he's in for training camp, I think you're fine. I'm curious to see how long he would take a holdout. But ultimately, they're going to pay him. He's going to be here for a long time. This isn't going to be like a Jamal Adams thing. He wants to be here. They love him. He's the best player on the team, and they need him. And, especially because they don't have much around him at defensive tackle right now. But, I think he's going to wind up, Dexter Lawrence is also there. I don't know what the Giants are in a rush to do that either. So maybe it'll be like a battle of whoever gets the last contract usually gets the most money. So it's going to be a battle of who can hold out the longest, I guess, between the Giants and Jets. But, I'm not concerned about Quinnen. Added Quinton Jefferson. They have a really good group around them. They're bringing back Carl Lawson. Like this team's all in, and part of being all in is paying. The Jets haven't very often paid a big second contract to rookies they drafted. So this is gonna be a big moment for the organization.
Yeah, it'd be good to see, and it's another sign of things heading in the right direction when you can get that agreement where the player wants to stay long term and is a big part of everything, just the locker room and what they do on the field. I think that is anything else to add from either of you, or I think we're good.
I think we should talk about what check marks have officially.
I was about to say that was literally what I was about to say, Marissa. You beat me to it. Yeah, so you watch out for the fake Zach Blatts out there. Guys.
Yes, honestly, be very careful. This is like the worst week out of the draft.
It's dumb.
How many fake Adam Schefters there's gonna be?
They're already were, and they were already getting people. But yeah, that's
exactly.
It's just a wild time we live in. But
they should give Adam Schefter should get like $1 of the $7 a month for every
fake one
himself. Yeah.
Well, actually, he still has the check, so he must be paying for Twitter.
Oh wow, Adam Schefter doling out the big bucks.
Yeah. But lots
Zach,
of people...
you're not ponying up the $7.
No, I'm not paying a dime to Twitter. You kidding me?
That's the thing. Like, it's one thing to pay $7 for it, but when you think about like where the money goes, then you're like, oh,
yeah, exactly. Maybe if like the company was going to do it, and understandably they're not. So I think just trust you make sure you're clicking on when you see a tweet that sounds weird, maybe you click on it first. And I say some weird things, so you should probably check most of my tweets probably, but whatever Connor tweets, it's a fake account. Like don't listen to that.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't think ESPN's paying for those blue check marks either. I talked to somebody over there, or maybe some people. So maybe Schefter's
case
covered,
by case,
like the true insiders. But
I just saw Diana though; she did not have one.
Wow. So there you go. Yeah. So it's not a company-wide policy.
Wonder if Woj has one. That would be the other big one.
That's a good point.
This is compelling. No, he doesn't. Woj does not have a check mark. Wow.
Mine's gone too, for what it's worth.
People were like very worried about that.
All right. And with that, hope that everybody
Unverified Can't Wait podcast checking out.
Yes. And we will have you covered all next week.
Yes. We're gonna have a lot of podcasts.
We're gonna do a preview podcast before the draft. Early Tuesday?
Yeah,
Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah, because Joe Douglas is talking on Tuesday. So
there you go. So Tuesday with Joe Douglas, then post round 1, post round 2, and day 2. And then I think we'll recap the whole thing the following week, right?
Yeah.
So basically, like 4 or 5 podcasts.
There'll be a lot of draft stuff.
Week.
Maybe there's an emergency trade podcast in there somewhere too. Who knows?
Maybe we can hope.
Finally,
we can hope.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we will talk to you again soon.